Here I'm going to do a set of 4 examples which build on each other to bring us to a really cool way of breaking down a quadratic trinomial. So first let's take this first simple example, 3xy minus 5y, and the command is to factor. So by observation we can see that the y is common to both of these pieces, so I'm going to factor out that y, and when I do so, what remains from the first piece when the y is pulled out is 3x minus, and from the second piece, when the y is pulled out, we get a 5. So the final answer to this particular problem would be y multiplied by quantity 3x minus 5. Okay, so now next one, pause the video if you want to give this a shot on your own, but it's almost the same as the last one, but instead of y, we now have this binomial x plus 2. So I'm going to use the same kind of approach. I see a common x plus 2, so I'm going to simply pull that out in front of my factoring. When I do so, that means the x plus 2 has now been pulled out, so in the first place we're remaining with the 3x. There's our minus sign, and in the second place we're left with the number 5. So the final answer this time would be x plus 2 multiplied by 3x minus 5. Okay, next level, imagine we had this quadrinomial. Well, actually this is technically a trinomial because you might notice that the two middle pieces could combine into a plus 1x, but I'm going to treat this via factoring by grouping. So in the first case I'm going to look at those first two and notice that there's a common 3 and a common x, which would leave me with 3x times x plus 2, and then separately over here I'm going to look at the minus 5x and the minus 10, and from those I'll factor out a minus and a 5. So when I do that, there's the minus 5. You notice I pull the 5 out, I get an x, and if I pull out a negative 5 from negative 10, I have plus 2. So now you can see the tie-in to the previous problem. Now we have this common x plus 2, so I'm going to simply pull that out in front and call that x plus 2. And then what's remaining or left over? Well, in the first case we have a 3x minus, and then over here when the x plus 2 was pulled out, we're left with the number 5. Right? Oops, I've been highlighting these in red, so there we go, boxing it in red. So you ready for the last level now? Finally, let's factor a quadratic trinomial quadratic. So we have 3x squared plus x minus 10. So one strategy we can use on this is, in class I refer to this as the x method. We can find the adding number and the multiplying number. The adding number is the coefficient to the linear term, which in this case is 1. The multiplying number is the product of the first and the last terms. So 3 times negative 10, which is negative 30. Once you determine those two numbers, the multiply number and the add number, you can then run through your mind to imagine all of the numbers you can think of that add to 1 and multiply to negative 30. So hopefully after some, if you pause the video, try it out on your own, the two numbers after some work here might be like a 6 and a negative 5. Notice 6 plus negative 5 is 1, 6 times negative 5 is negative 30. So what we can do with that now is we can come over to our factoring problem and write down the 3x and the minus 10. I'm not going to touch those, but because of that 6 and that 5, I'm going to take that plus x and turn it into plus 6x minus 5x. And what this is going to do for me is it's going to allow me to approach it by the grouping technique we saw on the last slide. So now, common 3x, leaving me with x plus 2, and a common minus 5, leaving me with an x plus 2. All the way back to our second slide now, I see that x plus 2, which can be pulled out in front, leaving us at the end with an x plus 2 multiplied by the leftover 3x minus 5. So hopefully this little sequence of 4 videos gives you not only the motivation for what we're trying to do, but also lets you see 4 different techniques that are technically separate, but each one of these are useful in their own right.